I thought I had the perfect life, a devoted wife, 2 beautiful daughters, and a home filled with love. But one text message shattered everything, revealing a betrayal so deep it pushed me to the edge, and beyond. Emma and I met about 7 years ago, and from the moment we started talking, it felt like we'd known each other forever. We both grew up in small towns in the Midwest, where faith and family were the cornerstones of life. Sundays meant church, and we found joy in planning our futures together. At the time, I was a young, ambitious engineer with a career on the rise, and Emma was thriving as a sales representative for a major accounting software firm based out of Atlanta. Before we tied the knot, my parents gifted me a beautiful 3-bedroom house as a celebration of my graduation from college. My mom and dad had always been the generous type. They believed in sharing their blessings during their lifetime rather than waiting until it was too late. For them, seeing the joy their gifts brought to others was the ultimate reward. I remember feeling so fortunate, not just because of the house, but because of the values they instilled in me. Emma and I married just over 5 years ago, and honestly, it's felt like one long, blissful honeymoon ever since. Our connection was magnetic, and our intimacy reflected that. We were deeply in love, and our physical bond was strong. We made time for each other in that way several nights a week. Friends often teased us, saying they were sick of how close we were, but I knew they admired the love we shared. We were best friends, partners, and soulmates. A few years into our marriage, we were blessed with twin daughters, 2 beautiful blonde-haired girls who completely changed our world. Becoming parents was transformative in the best way. Our days became centered on creating a loving, nurturing home for them. If you asked anyone, they'd say our life was simple, maybe even a little predictable. We didn't need the thrill of an extravagant social life. Instead, we found joy in the quiet moments, cooking dinners at home during the week, enjoying date nights on weekends, and attending church every Sunday. Emma was never one to chase after fleeting trends or flashy appearances. Her style was understated and professional at work, and at home, she kept things modest, except when it came to me. Behind closed doors, she had this playful side, one that was reserved for my eyes alone. It was something I loved about her. She didn't just show affection, she embodied it. Whether it was a gentle touch, a soft kiss, or a warm hug, Emma had a way of making me feel seen, valued, and deeply loved. Our relationship thrived on trust and openness. We never kept secrets from each other, which became the foundation of our marriage. I truly believe that transparency was our greatest strength and the reason we had built such a strong, unshakable bond. Emma and I always cherished the way we could share everything, our feelings, our thoughts, and, most importantly, our lives. Being parents to twins brought its own challenges, but it also deepened our bond. While raising them could be overwhelming at times, I genuinely enjoyed every moment I could spend with our girls. Emma, on the other hand, sometimes found the stress a bit harder to manage. That's where I stepped in, happy to support her whenever she needed a breather. We had a strong partnership, one where we leaned on each other to keep things running smoothly, and we made it a point to work out any issues before frustration ever got the better of us. Life with Emma and our twin daughters was a blessing I didn't take for granted. Our days were filled with love and laughter, and I often found myself marveling at just how lucky I was. Things couldn't have been better, or so I thought. A week before her company's annual exhibition, Emma got the news that she was being called in to fill for someone who had fallen sick. The event was a big deal, a 3-day showcase, and the team was desperate. Despite her efforts to opt out, she had no choice but to go. "Baby, I'm so sorry about this," she said, frustration clear in her voice as she folded clothes into her suitcase. "I hate leaving you and the girls for 3 whole days. I called my boss twice, trying to get out of it, but he insisted the entire team had to be there." I could see how much it bothered her, so I reassured her the best I could. "Don't worry about us, Emma. We'll be fine. The girls and I will miss you, of course, but we'll be right here cheering you on." I watched her pack, helped her close up the suitcase, and carried her luggage to the limo the company had arranged for her trip to the airport. It was moments like these that reminded me of just how strong our relationship was. I trusted Emma completely. In all the years we'd been together, I had never seen her act in a way that was anything less than devoted. She was loving, attentive, and always put family first. Ours was a marriage built on transparency. We didn't keep secrets from each other. We shared everything, from the big moments to the smallest details, and that foundation of trust was something I valued more than anything. So when my phone buzzed with an unexpected message on the second night of her trip, I didn't know what to make of it. The text was from Greg, a colleague and friend of mine who was attending a cybersecurity event in Atlanta, the same city where Emma's exhibition was being held. "David, how's your weekend going, mate?" the message read. At first, I didn't think much of it. Greg and I had worked together for years, and we'd occasionally check in with one another. But something about the timing struck me as odd, and I had a strange feeling in my gut that I couldn't shake. I was spending time with my girls, soaking up every moment while Emma was away at the exhibition. Our daughter's laughter filled the house, and for a while, I didn't think about anything else. Life felt simple and good, even with Emma miles away. I was fully immersed in our evening together when my phone buzzed with a message from Greg. Greg and I had known each other for years. He was at a cybersecurity conference that weekend, so his message didn't seem out of place at first. "Aren't you at the security conference this weekend?" I replied, curious about why he was texting me out of the blue. His response came quickly. "I am. You said Emma's at a trade show, right? Do you know which one?" I paused for a moment, rereading the message. "Yeah, it's in Atlanta, but I'm not sure of the name. Her company's booth is at the convention center." "Why do you ask?" Greg's next message made my stomach churn. "I'm having dinner with my team, and, well, I thought you should see this." Attached were 2 photos and a video. My heart sank as I clicked on the first photo. It was of a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Emma. She was wearing a dress so short and revealing I hardly recognized her. The plunging neckline exposed more than I had ever seen her reveal in public, and her flawless hair and makeup completed the look. She wore heels I'd never seen before, towering pumps that accentuated her legs. She looked absolutely stunning, but the outfit was completely out of character for her. For a moment, I laughed nervously. This had to be a mistake, right? Some stranger who just happened to look like my wife. I even thought to myself, I wish Emma would dress like that one day, but quickly shook my head. It couldn't possibly be her. The next photo wiped the smile off my face. It was a close-up of her sitting with Jonathan, one of her senior colleagues. She was leaning into him, her lips brushing against his, and they looked far too comfortable together. My chest tightened. I tried to dismiss it as a trick of the angle or a friendly gesture taken out of context. Then the final image loaded, and all the doubts I was clinging to evaporated. It was Emma again, her face lit up with a radiant smile as she stared into Jonathan's eyes. The intimacy between them was undeniable. My heart pounded, and I felt the blood drain from my face. I sat frozen, staring at the screen, unable to move or even blink. I tried desperately to convince myself that there was some logical explanation. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, a playful moment caught in the wrong light. I wanted to believe anything but what my eyes were telling me. Then came the video. It was only a few seconds long, but it shattered every last shred of hope I had. Emma was sitting with Jonathan, her arms wrapped around his neck as they kissed passionately. His hand slid to her chest, and she didn't push him away. My head swam, and my breath came in short, panicked gasps. In that moment, everything exploded. The world I thought I knew, the trust, the love, the life we had built, crumbled in an instant. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was this just a moment of weakness, or had I been blind to something far bigger? I couldn't think straight. All I could do was sit there, gripping my phone with trembling hands, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal. My daughter's laughter echoed faintly in the background, a cruel reminder of the life I thought I had. The weight of what I had just seen crushed me like nothing I'd ever experienced before. My entire world, the life I had built with Emma, collapsed in an instant. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unrelenting, as a whirlwind of emotions gripped me: pain, anger, betrayal, and disbelief. My heart raced, and I felt a wave of nausea building, threatening to consume me. A new message arrived from Greg. "David. I can't believe it's her. I mean, I've never seen her act or dress like that. And, I'm sorry, man, but your wife is, well, she's stunning. I didn't mean it like that, though. I hope you understand." I closed my eyes, taking a moment to compose myself before responding. "It's okay, Greg. Thank you for sharing this with me and not keeping it from me. You're a good friend. I'll figure this out on my own. Please, don't confront her or make yourself known to her. If anything else happens, let me know, but don't spend any more time following her. I'll handle this. Are you going to be okay?" Greg replied, concern evident in his words. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling as I typed out my response. "No, Greg. I'm not okay. I'm far from it." After that, I set my phone down, retreating into the painful silence of my thoughts. The images and the video played over and over in my mind, like a cruel loop I couldn't escape. I kept replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I might have missed. How did we get here? How did I not see this coming? Hours passed, and my emotions ebbed into something almost mechanical. As an engineer, my mind naturally leaned toward solving problems. But this wasn't some formula to balance or system to optimize, it was my life, my family, my future unraveling before me. Still, I couldn't stop myself from trying to process everything analytically, as if doing so might somehow dull the pain. Then, at 10 p.m., Emma called. The sound of her ringtone jolted me from my spiraling thoughts. I froze, staring at the screen as her name and photo lit up my phone. My hands hovered, shaking slightly, before I answered. I tried to take a deep breath, to calm the storm inside me before I spoke. "Hey, babe," Emma said, her voice cheerful and casual, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Just wanted to check in before bed. How are the girls? How was your day?" Her words felt like daggers, and I struggled to keep my composure. "They're fine," I replied, my voice hollow. "We had a good day." "Good, good. I miss you all so much." "I can't wait to come home," she said, her voice softening. "I hate these trips." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead, I forced myself to play along. "We miss you too," I managed to say. "How was your day?" "Oh, the usual," she replied breezily. "Meetings, networking, you know how it is. I'm just about to head to bed." I swallowed hard, my mind racing with questions. Was she really in her hotel room? Was Jonathan there with her? My thoughts were interrupted by another buzz from my phone, a message from Greg. I hesitated, glancing at the notification. The accompanying image made my stomach drop. It was another photo of Emma and Jonathan, this time sitting on a sofa in what looked like a hotel lobby. Her arms were draped around his neck, and his hand was unmistakably sliding under the hem of her short skirt. They were kissing, oblivious to anyone who might see them. They looked like a couple madly in love, basking in their public display of affection. It was a cruel irony, what she was sharing with him, she had once shared with me. The photo drove the final nail into the coffin of my denial. Whatever explanation I had been clinging to was gone. Greg's final message followed shortly after: "I hate to be the one to show you this, buddy. You deserve to know the truth. I'm so sorry." I stared at my phone, my grip tightening until my knuckles turned white. My world had been ripped apart, and now I had to decide what to do next. The tears came again, silent this time, as I realized that whatever remained of my marriage was over. Yet, despite the overwhelming emotions, I knew I needed answers. The truth, as painful as it was, would be my next step forward. By the time Emma finished talking to me, I was barely holding it together. She kept telling me how much she missed us, how she couldn't wait to come home, and how exhausting the trip had been. Each word felt like a knife, twisting deeper. I couldn't decide what hurt more, her betrayal or the blatant lies she fed me with such ease. Was it the fact that she had been unfaithful? Or was it the way she treated me like a fool, pretending everything was fine while she was with another man? The sting of it all, knowing she had turned me into some unwitting pawn in her secret life, left me reeling. After Greg's messages confirmed what I had feared, I knew I couldn't sit idle anymore. If Emma wanted to treat me like a fool, then I'd ensure I wasn't blindsided again. As the tech guru in our family, I had long been the one to handle anything involving devices or software. Quietly, I installed a tracking app on her phone months ago as a precaution in case it ever got lost. Little did I know how crucial that small act would become. Sitting at the kitchen table, I logged into her account from my laptop. The spyware I had activated began downloading her phone's contents to the cloud, and within minutes, everything she had shared recently was in front of me. Her messages to Jonathan were clear as day. I could hardly believe the words I was reading. "You were amazing last night, baby. I can't wait to be together again tonight." Each message hit me like a freight train, but I couldn't stop reading. There was another one. "Thank you for being so sweet and understanding. I've never felt this alive." The words burned into my brain. Alive? After everything we'd built, everything we had shared, he was what made her feel alive. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen, rage bubbling up with each passing second. I barely had the strength to contain myself, but I managed to close the laptop and walk into the living room. My twin daughters, blissfully unaware of the chaos swirling in my mind, were playing quietly. I knelt down, scooping both of them into my arms, holding them close. Their small voices and innocent giggles were the only things grounding me at that moment. The tears came again, though this time they were born of a different kind of pain. I held them tightly until they wriggled free and returned to their toys. Then, without a word, I went back to the kitchen, poured myself a strong drink, and stared blankly at the wall. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the glass. The overwhelming emotions, anger, hurt, humiliation, culminated in a sharp crash as I hurled the glass across the room, shattering it against the floor. After the outburst, I sat in the silence, my breathing heavy. I couldn't let the girls see me like this. Cleaning up the broken glass became a methodical task, a way to focus on something tangible. But inside, I was crumbling. In my heart, I knew the truth: the marriage was over. There was no saving what Emma had destroyed. The love I had for her, the trust, the admiration, all of it was being replaced by contempt, anger, and bitterness. I couldn't bear to listen to any more of her conversations with Jonathan or sift through the files I had downloaded. I left them to pile up in the cloud, knowing that one day I might need them, but for now, I couldn't stomach it. She had always been a good liar, too good, I realized now. "I love you too, baby. More than you'll ever know." That was one of the last messages she had sent him. The words, once sacred to me, now felt hollow and tainted. My pain had morphed into something sharper, more focused. I wasn't going to waste my energy questioning her anymore. Instead, I would channel it into what came next. It was time to take action. Emma had made her choice, and now I needed to make mine. I was determined to make Emma pay for what she had done. The love I had for her, the love I had given so freely, so completely, felt like a double-edged sword. It made the betrayal cut even deeper. Still, as much as it hurt, I knew I had to act. There was no way I was going to let her lies and deceit go unanswered. When Emma returned from her trip, I met her at the airport. She spotted me and ran into my arms, hugging me tightly and kissing me just as she'd promised she would. For a brief moment, I questioned everything. Was she truly this good of an actress, or did she genuinely still love me in some warped way? Her smile was warm, her embrace familiar. It all felt so real. Once we got home, life seemed to fall back into its usual rhythm. Emma came home from work at the same time every evening, there were no suspicious phone calls or messages, and she seemed just as attentive as ever. I even allowed myself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I had gotten it all wrong. What if it had been a mistake? What if everything could somehow go back to normal? But those fleeting hopes were shattered the moment I received the call from Mr. Bryce, the private investigator I had hired. He requested a meeting to discuss his findings. The next day, I found myself sitting in the sterile conference room of his downtown office, my heart pounding as I awaited the truth. "Good afternoon, David," Mr. Bryce greeted me with a firm handshake. His expression was solemn, and I braced myself for what was to come. "Good to see you, Mr. Bryce," I replied, though my voice lacked conviction. He sighed heavily before speaking. "David, I wish I had nothing to report, and I truly wish I could tell you that you were mistaken. But unfortunately, I have some bad news." I nodded silently, urging him to continue. "Kim and Jonathan have been visiting a motel at least 4 times a week for the past 3 months, he explained, sliding a folder across the table. These photos were taken daily, usually around 1 p.m. On average, they spent 2 hours together during each visit. My breath hitched as I flipped through the photographs. There she was, Emma, laughing, smiling, and walking hand in hand with Jonathan as if they didn't have a care in the world. My stomach churned, and my hands began to tremble. But Mr. Bryce wasn't finished. He tapped the folder gently. "There's something else, David. Over the past month, another man has been involved. He's been visiting your wife 4 times a week alongside Jonathan." I furrowed my brow, barely able to process what he was saying. "Who is it? Do you recognize him?" he asked, sliding another set of photos toward me. My jaw dropped as I stared at the man in the images. "Oh my God," I muttered, my voice barely audible. "Is this Jason Sinclair, the CEO of her company?" Mr. Bryce nodded gravely. "I'm afraid so. And yes, it appears your wife has been involved with both Jonathan and Mr. Sinclair. The text messages reveal that Jonathan introduced Jason into their arrangement after your wife expressed interest in trying a threesome." The words hung heavy in the air, and I felt as though the floor beneath me had fallen away. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was cheating with 2 men, one of whom was her boss and the head of her company. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating. Bryce hesitated before adding, "Jonathan has been married for 10 years and has 4 young children. Mr. Sinclair has been married for 25 years and has 3 grown children." Hearing this only made the situation feel darker, more twisted. These weren't just faceless men, they were people with families, with lives, all entangled in this web of deceit Emma had woven. I stared at the damning evidence before me, unable to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the one in these photos and messages. How had she fallen so far? Was this who she had always been, hiding beneath the surface? Or had something changed, pulling her into this betrayal? I prayed that somehow, this would all turn out to be one terrible misunderstanding. But as I sat there, drowning in the truth, I knew there was no turning back. Whatever came next, it would not be the life I had once envisioned with Emma. The evening had taken on an odd tension as we sat together, watching a movie about cheating spouses. I had planned this moment carefully, rehearsing how I would steer the conversation. Halfway through the film, I decided to act. "You know," I began, keeping my tone casual, "there's this girl at my office who's been hitting on me for the past few months." I chuckled nervously, glancing at Emma. Can you imagine me with another woman? I added, laughing as if it were the most absurd thought in the world. Her reaction was immediate. She turned to me, her eyes narrowing with an intensity that made my chest tighten. Really? Who is she? She demanded, her voice sharp. If I catch you even thinking about being with someone else, I'll leave you. Do you understand? You belong to me, and no one else. Her words, delivered with such conviction, felt like a slap. I blinked, caught off guard by her serious expression. For a moment, I felt as though I had been the one caught cheating. I'm just joking, I stammered, trying to defuse the situation. But she wasn't done. That's not funny, she said, her tone cold. I can't believe you'd even bring something like that up. I apologized quickly, nodding along as she continued. She had a way of flipping a situation on its head, making me feel guilty even when I knew I shouldn't. I agreed with her, letting the tension settle, and we turned back to the movie. As I sat there, I couldn't help but smile to myself, though the humor was bitter. She could have been an actress, I thought. Emma was so convincing, so thoroughly believable in her indignation, that I found myself questioning the evidence I'd seen with my own eyes. It was no wonder she excelled at her job, she could sell any story to anyone. After a while, she relaxed against me, pressing herself into my shoulder as though the earlier exchange hadn't happened. I knew this was my moment. I reached for my phone, my heart pounding as I opened the text app and selected one of the photos of her and Jonathan. I handed her the phone without saying a word. Her expression shifted in an instant. The confidence that had radiated from her moments ago flickered, replaced by something I hadn't seen in her before, doubt. Baby, she began, her voice softer now, we only had one dance, and he was drunk. When the song ended, he grabbed me and kissed me. She paused, clearly searching for the right words. What you don't see is that right after that, I slapped him and made a scene. I would never let that happen. I actually bought that dress for a business dinner, but I didn't realize how revealing it was until now. I'm so sorry. Her explanation was rushed, almost rehearsed, as though she had practiced it in the mirror before facing me. I stared at her, silent, watching the cracks in her composure grow. Oh, I understand, I said finally, my tone calm but laced with irony. So, that was the only time this happened? She nodded quickly, eager to solidify her version of events. Yes, baby. And it'll never happen again, she promised, leaning toward me as if to seal the deal with her closeness. But I wasn't letting her off the hook. The problem, kitten, I said, emphasizing the nickname she had once used with such affection, is that this isn't just about what happened. It's about trust. And right now, I don't trust you. Her face fell, the color draining from her cheeks as she realized the weight of my words. I wasn't playing along with her story anymore. I wasn't the gullible, adoring husband she had relied on to overlook the evidence. I was someone who knew the truth, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. She tried to recover, launching into another explanation. You know how I am when I've had a few drinks. I barely remember the video. I got a little drunk, and you know me, baby, I would never do anything to hurt you. I cut her off, shaking my head. That's the problem, Emma. I don't know you. Not anymore. Her silence hung heavy between us, and for the first time, she didn't have a response. I looked away, letting the weight of the moment sink in. This was the turning point, the moment where I finally saw her for who she had become. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I could ever look at her the same way again. I watched Emma carefully as I spoke, searching for any hint of the truth behind her words. When I mentioned trust, she blinked, a momentary falter in her otherwise practiced demeanor. Without her knowledge, I discreetly pressed the record button on my phone. David, listen to me, she said, her voice trembling. Nothing happened, okay? Yes, I kissed him, like you saw, but that was it. Every time, I told him to stop. You have to believe me. Please, baby. I don't want to lose you. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she reached for my hand, her voice pleading. Her desperation was palpable, but I wasn't sure if it was rooted in love or fear of being exposed. I tilted my head, keeping my tone calm but firm. I hear you, Emma. And I want to believe you. But I can't help feeling confused. The way you were dressed that night, I paused, watching her reaction. You've never worn anything like that for me. And your hair and makeup? You never go to that much effort unless it's a special occasion. So, who was it for? Was it for him? She hesitated, her expression momentarily clouded with guilt before she quickly masked it with indignation. David, don't be ridiculous. I didn't dress up for him. I didn't even realize how revealing the dress was until I put it on. You have to believe me. I stared at her in silence, waiting for her to answer the question I had asked. But she dodged it entirely, launching into another round of reassurances. Her acting was impressive, I had to give her that. But at that moment, I didn't care. Whatever love or longing I once felt was buried beneath the bitterness of betrayal. Over the next few weeks, her performances continued. Every night, she doubled down on her efforts to convince me that I was her only love. She became more passionate, more attentive, and her words were laced with what I might have once believed was sincerity. But now, I could see it for what it was, damage control. And I let her carry on, sitting back and watching the show. If she wanted to act, I'd be her audience. But I had my own plans in motion. The morning after one of her dramatic declarations, I logged into the cloud to check for new correspondence. As expected, Emma didn't disappoint. There were more messages between her and Jonathan. One in particular made my blood boil. Oh my God, someone took photos of us at the motel. What if they get out? The nerve of her to act like the victim, to worry about exposure rather than remorse, fueled my resolve. I started taking steps to protect myself. The first thing I did was secure my finances. I transferred funds, closed joint accounts, and ensured Emma wouldn't have access to anything significant. I left my main Visa card open but lowered its limit to $2,500 to minimize any damage she could cause. Since Emma had no idea how deeply upset I was, she never suspected I had taken these precautions. I confirmed with my lawyer that, because I owned the house prior to our marriage, it would remain mine. I wouldn't have to leave once the separation began. That knowledge gave me a small sense of relief, it was one less thing she could use against me. Then, I prepared the infamous email. In it, I addressed all the logistical aspects, finances, living arrangements, and legalities, while carefully avoiding the elephant in the room, her affair. I knew my silence would drive her crazy. Not knowing what I was thinking, or when I might confront her, must have been exhausting for her. And that was the point. But before I hit send, I decided to have a little more fun. Over dinner one evening, I casually brought up the topic again. So, Emma, I said, my voice light and conversational, did your boss take any disciplinary steps against you after, well, you know? Her face paled, and she glanced down at her plate, struggling to maintain her composure. What do you mean? She asked, her voice tight. You know, I replied, leaning in slightly. After the situation. Did Jonathan report you to HR, or is he keeping quiet? She stammered something incoherent, her cheeks flushing. I watched her squirm, barely able to conceal my satisfaction. The cracks in her facade were growing, and it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. As she continued to stumble over her words, I thought of the messages she had sent to Jonathan. You're amazing. I can't wait to be in your arms again. The memories of her deceit fueled my anger, but I forced myself to remain composed. The time for confrontation would come, but for now, I let her sit in the tension of her own making. I knew Emma was still meeting Jonathan at the hotel every day. How she managed to carry on with such ease, lying so convincingly, was both infuriating and baffling. I couldn't fathom how someone I had loved so deeply could live such a double life. Things escalated when Sheriff Clark walked into Jason Sinclair's office, handing him an envelope. "Mr. Sinclair, you have been notified," the sheriff said firmly. A second later, Sinclair was alone in his expansive office, the envelope trembling in his hands. Fear crept across his face as he read the complaint, then read it again, and again. His chest tightened as he tried to comprehend the severity of the situation. Sinclair immediately called for Jonathan to join him. Meanwhile, Jonathan had just been served his own set of papers. He rushed into Sinclair's office, and the two men stood in silence, the weight of the accusations heavy in the air. "Kim, what the hell happened?" Jonathan finally stammered, unable to string together a coherent thought. "How does he know about all of us?" Jonathan's words seemed to trigger something in Sinclair. "What do you mean, all of us?" Sinclair snapped. "I was just served with divorce papers, and now, what, we're facing a lawsuit too." "David's filed a civil case," Jonathan explained, his voice shaking. "He must have more evidence than the 2 photos we saw. We need to stop this before it gets worse. You have to talk to Kim, get her to convince David to back down, or this will destroy everything." Sinclair's face darkened, his voice turning icy. "If this gets out, Jonathan, it's not just my career, it's my entire family on the line. Fix this. Or I will." Later that evening, Emma sat across from me in the living room, her expression a mix of forced calm and concealed desperation. She reached for my hand and tried to pull me close. "David," she said softly, "I need you to understand. I don't want a divorce. I love you. I need you. I can't sign those papers." Her tone was pleading, but I could see through it. "Jonathan means nothing to me," she continued, her words hurried. "You're the only man I've ever loved." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Funny, Emma. You say that while your buddies, the CEO and your senior colleague, were helping destroy our marriage. If you think I'm going to sit here and let this go, you're mistaken. After everything you've done to me, to us, to our girls, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are." The sharpness in my voice caught her off guard. Emma had never heard me speak with such anger or resolve. For the first time, she seemed to grasp the gravity of her situation. Tears filled her eyes as she realized there was no talking her way out of this. The next morning, Sinclair was on the phone with Jonathan, his voice echoing with frustration. "Jesus Christ, Jonathan, what have you done? You've ruined everything." Kim was crying on the other end of the call, her voice breaking as she tried to defend herself. "I can't do anything. David won't listen to me. He's out of control." Sinclair growled in response. "Fix it. Or this is going to get even uglier." By 4 p.m., I was at my private investigator's office, preparing for a meeting with Jonathan. The investigator had set up noise-canceling technology to ensure we could capture every word of the conversation clearly, no matter the environment. A camera was ready to film the encounter. At 6 p.m., I met Jonathan in the courtyard. He was visibly nervous, fidgeting as he tried to find the right words. "David," he began, his voice trembling, "what will it take for you to stop all this? To bring Kim back? Just name your price." I stared at him, my voice calm but firm. "There is no amount of money in the world that could convince me to take her back. She betrayed me in ways I'll never forgive. You and Sinclair didn't just ruin my marriage, you ruined lives. And now, you'll face the consequences." I pulled out my phone and sent the text messages and email I had prepared. Within minutes, all of Emma's friends, family, and colleagues received the photos, videos, and messages that exposed her betrayal. Couriers delivered duplicate evidence to the homes of Sinclair and Jonathan's wives. The fallout was immediate. Sinclair's wife filed for divorce, taking him for everything he had. Jonathan faced a similar fate, losing his home, his finances, and custody of his children. The civil trial added a crushing $1 million fine for conspiracy and adultery. As for Emma, the scandal completely destroyed her support network. Friends and family turned their backs on her, unable to reconcile the person they thought they knew with the reality of her actions. The guilt consumed her, and she fell into a spiral of depression, attempting suicide multiple times. She was in and out of mental health facilities, haunted by the lives she had destroyed, including her own. Meanwhile, I focused on what mattered most, my daughters. Free from the lies and deceit, I devoted myself entirely to them, finding solace in the joy they brought me. Though the scars of Emma's betrayal would never fully fade, I began to rebuild my life, one day at a time.